So I don't have my actual studio set up for some reason. It's not working properly. I haven't done a recording in a while. So you'll probably have to send me the video later on, or just share me a link wherever you
Oh,
have it.
that's okay. Well, how it normally works, I'm working on Zoom off my mobile phone. So Zoom
Uh,
records it. It takes them
uh,
about an hour to process, and they send me a link. So I'll just send that link to you.
Perfect. Uh,
Can
I
I
guess
just
we
do
should
what I
start.
always do at the start of these things, which
Sure.
is just say, so we've got it recorded,
Uh-huh.
but we are both free to record this.
Sure. I agree.
We're both free to publish it where we like, but we cannot so that nobody can edit to make the other one look stupid.
Correct. I agree.
Cool, brilliant. Well, look, nice to meet you. Um, you were the one that wanted
Nice.
to have a discussion. So, as I understand it, we're talking about whether or not Christianity is true and what atheism means. Is that about right?
That is correct.
Okay, well, over to you. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, the issue, however, when discussing Christianity from an atheistic perspective is Christianity is a system of beliefs, right? And as best as I can understand how atheists think, it's a system of beliefs in what can be proven to be true. Now, in order to believe what is to be proven to be true, there has to be a test, right? So the approach to each ideology is completely different, right? You cannot come from a perspective of scientifically trying to prove if God exists because you'll never find a actual scientific, let's say you're trying to add numbers in order to find proof of God. That's not going to happen, right? Now, most atheists will claim they're trying to reach the truth. And I always wonder, right? So what does that mean? What does truth mean? So truth is essentially an undisputable fact, right? And I had to actually research into the semantics of what truth means. And it's basically unmutable and unchanging. But in order to find what is unmutable and unchanging, you have to find the source and the origin of that. And that is impossible to find from a modern perspective. So everything that we think about what is true and original cannot be based off the modern understanding of how science works. That's the issue with that. The second argument that I would give for the existence of God in general is that everything that we think about life is of transcendental origin. It precedes us, it has nothing to do with us. Science is constantly evolving and many times has been proven to change itself based on its own belief systems, right? But Christianity specifically is an unchanging belief system. It hasn't actually changed in 2,000 years, regardless of the denominations that it forms. So those are my two main arguments. If we're going to find out what is true or not, we have to verify, in fact, where is the origin of that truthness and who is the author, the authority of that truth, because there's an authority for everything. And it's a singular point. And then number two, again, is that if we are to discover what is true or not, there has to be an authority figure for that truthness. That's my two main cases.
Okay. Um, I don't recognize the relevance of either of those cases, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
First, atheism is very, very simply a statement of non belief.
Okay.
Theism is belief in God. Atheism, the A is a negation, is not belief in God. So it doesn't inherently entail the idea that I have a particular epistemology. It doesn't say anything about any other beliefs I may or may not have. I do not know, for example, whether or not um, the Big Bang was the beginning of this universe, or simply the beginning of this instantiation of the universe. But I don't need to know that. I do not believe that God is a sufficient explanation. And that's all atheism is. It's a disbelief in a God. It's not a claim to knowledge. That would be gnosis.
That would be what?
It's
Sorry.
gnosis. GNO, as in agnostic, do not know.
Oh, I got you. I see what you're
Yes.
saying.
Now, as it happens, I'm an agnostic atheist, depending
Okay.
upon the God claim. I do not believe there is a God, but I don't know there isn't. For all I know, there could be some cowardly deity hiding behind an asteroid somewhere in the vicinity of Betelgeuse. I have no way to disprove that. I do not
Okay.
believe it, though. So I'm an agnostic atheist.
Okay. So this is what I would ask you. If we are to run society, how would you determine what is the proper way to run society as a whole?
Okay, well, first of all, that's a slightly different question because you're now talking
Sure,
about the
sure. No, I get
utility of
it.
a belief rather than
Yeah,
its
no,
accuracy.
there's a point this because if we don't really follow through with our you could call it belief or non-belief, it doesn't matter. Non-belief is also a belief because the whole purpose of following an
Well,
idea is because we sorry.
insofar as
Hmm.
I do not believe that, for example, the God of Abraham exists. In that sense, I'm a Gnostic atheist. I am
Okay.
absolutely certain that the God of Abraham does not and cannot exist, certainly not as described in the Bible. But in terms of
Okay.
any God, I'm an agnostic. There may be some God I've never heard of.
Uh, this is where it confuses me. The most documented case for if there is a God is the God of Abraham.
So,
But you say you do not believe in that God, but you may believe in other gods that have almost no documentation from the perspective of documentation.
no, what I'm saying is I do not
Okay.
believe in any God, but there may be a God I haven't heard of that actually would convince me. But as it stands, I've
Yeah.
never heard of a God that convinces me. I do not believe. That's why I'm an atheist.
No, I understand. However, what I am saying is the following: just the perspective of the non belief, the non existence of God is a belief system, right? You're believing in the idea there is no God.
Hang on,
So you're
how would you define a system?
is the way you behave yourself, the way you understand things.
Well, so to me, a system
Yeah.
of beliefs involves more than one belief.
Sure. I mean, we can believe all kinds of things in order to justify how we do things, but the point still stands whether there is a superior being that is running things, right? In a way.
Well, that would be a single belief. So it's not a belief system.
I mean, if you're going to make the case of a single belief system, you have to make the exclusive case of morality. Morality is a
No, you
black and
don't.
white issue.
No, you don't.
Sure, you do.
My morality has nothing to do with my atheism.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So it's
Morality.
not a belief system. It's a single belief. My singular belief that no God I have ever heard of convinces me is a singular belief. It's not a belief system.
Yeah, but
It doesn't
God,
entail anything else.
the essence of God is not here to convince people. Does that make
That's
sense?
irrelevant. We're talking about what I believe.
No, I understand, but a lot of people will claim that I am not convinced, right? I'm not convinced of this or that. The point of the
You're not
argument
convinced.
of God, the point of the argument of God is not to convince people, but it becomes self-evidential by the fruits of it, right? For example, when you say you're trying to find out why the sky is blue, you'll say it's self-evidential because you can watch it. So the same perspective from God is in the fruits that it produces, right?
Okay, why the sky is blue is not self-evidential because you can watch it. Um, there are a number of uh, principles around physics and optics that make it appear blue to us. That does not necessarily mean that it is blue. That's the difference between objective and subjective.
Yeah, but again, you're trying to find out what is the truthness of it. I gave the example of the sky is blue because that's what we can relate to, right? I mean, many factors can determine its change in color or its
Well,
appearance,
okay,
but
but
that's
it's a
not what I
bad
was arguing.
example because it's a right, it's a bad example because it's not an objective truth.
So, in order to reach an objective truth, there has to be an authority behind that objective truth.
No, there
There's
doesn't.
always there's always an authority for any claim, all of it. There's not a single
Okay,
there's not a single
all right.
claim in the entire ecosystem of humanity that has no authority, not one.
There may not be a claim that has nobody claiming it. But go back to before there were humans on the earth.
Okay.
I'm assuming that you're not a young earth creationist. So go
I mean,
back to before
I
the
understand that concept, but it's not really that important. But continue.
all right. So before there were humans on the earth,
Mm,
trees existed, yeah?
sure.
Okay. Before there was a person to see the tree, was the tree real?
I mean, I guess.
Right. Well, that just takes away your argument. There doesn't need to be an authority behind the claim of truth. The tree was
No, that's
genuinely
not
there
true at
without
all.
any authority.
That's not true at all because you're going to have to explain what created the tree. And that is something that science is still discovering if you put it from the
Well,
scientific experience.
you're begging the question there when you say
Sure, of course, I'm
what.
begging the question.
Yeah, when you say what created the tree, I would say a
Yes,
better question would be how did the tree come to be?
exactly. So the thing
You do
is,
not
if
have
you,
to assume a creator.
yeah, but this is the thing. If you're addressing things from a non-belief perspective, even though I've multiple times said that this is a belief system by itself, is you're going to have to address things from a purely authoritarian perspective. Somebody has the belief
No.
system in things in order for it to be produced, right?
Let's say that nobody
Mm-hmm.
had ever been an atheist. That does not mean that we can assume that there was a creator. Because actually, what's objectively true has nothing to do with our subjective assumptions.
What is subjectively true? Well, you mean objectively?
What is objectively true
Yeah,
has nothing to do with our subjective assumptions.
correct. And in order to find out what is objective truth, you have to find out what is the original authority perspective.
No, because an authority would be, by definition, a subjective perspective. What's
Correct.
your
So there
understanding of the
is
word subjective?
personal perspective.
Right.
It's my yeah,
So it
subjective,
needs a
right?
mind.
Yeah,
Yes, subjective requires a mind.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Rocks have no minds. If no one sees the rock, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It is objectively there, irrespective of your opinion, my opinion, or the fact that there is no one there to see it and have an opinion.
Yes. However, what you're arguing again is the creation of things, right? Things were created because of
So
something.
I'm arguing how things came to be, not the creation.
Yeah, think look, even if you're arguing from the perspective of the Big Bang, which is, as far as I know, the only explanation that we have come up to explain the formation of the universe, right?
The present instantiation of the universe.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? You're talking about a science that can change at any whim because we deem it so as humans, right? Doesn't matter if we say this is true or not. We're saying we're changing whatever we understand about the universe based on what we discover. What I
There's
am
two things there.
arguing,
Two things there. Hang on, don't get going.
okay.
Two things. First, the assumptions about the Big Bang being the beginning of the present instantiation of the universe have not
Mm-hmm.
changed. It was never assumed to be the beginning of all that is because we can't see beyond the Planck time. So that's the first one. Secondly, you talk about the fact that science changes its mind.
Correct.
I mean, that's a bit bizarre anyway. But you talk about the fact that as we develop more understanding via the scientific method, which is a more accurate way to put it,
Mm-hmm.
then as we learn more, we change our understanding. And you say that as if it's a bad thing.
I'll explain why I say that. The history
Okay,
of Christianity, the original focus of Christianity is unchanging. It never changes.
right.
This is why the Orthodox Church has not changed in 2,000 years. And there's a
Oh, it
reason for
has.
this. No, no, no. When you're talking about modern belief system of orthodoxy, you may have a case. But I'm an Eastern Orthodox. We have not changed in 2,000 years. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Okay, Eastern Orthodox. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, okay.
Now, the concern, this is the issue, what I try to always make people understand. When we're speaking from the, if we're trying to convince people either or, right, we have to discuss it from each internal critiques. So, for example, if we're going to discuss how we're going to convince an atheist that Christianity is true, we have to talk about it from their perspective, right? However, if atheists are trying to convince Christians that Christianity is not true, they're going to have to convince it from the Christian perspective. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but
Yeah. So
I
what I'm
think that
saying is,
I think we always have to meet people where they are. One of the
yeah,
reasons why Christians talk past atheists is because they don't meet us where we are.
yeah. So my whole point of this discussion essentially is this. Is the point to convince each other of our belief system, or is it important to find out what is true from our own personal perspectives?
Well, I would always say it's that the point is to find out what is objectively true, or at least as
Yeah.
close as we can get to that.
So the only case that I can give that it may be moderately convincing for the opposition, which is atheism, is the case of morality, right? That,
Okay.
like, if we had to do opposing views about what is true or is not, morality is a black and white issue, right?
Give me
It's
one minute.
not.
I just excuse me 1 minute because we
Sure.
started more quickly than I expected. It's getting dark outside. I need to put my lights on. Just bear with me.
That's totally fine. I'll be here.
I work away from home, so I live in a caravan when I'm at work. So lighting is a little interesting.
I got you. I understand.
I would have been sat in the dark otherwise. But you were talking about morality.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I'm writing a message to someone. I apologize. Mm, sorry about that. It was about a storage item that I was selling. Anyway, um, yeah. So the issue with morality is a particular one because I actually have heard this argument quite extensively, and they say morality is subjective, is whatever culture or society determines so. But the reality is, from the Christian perspective, is morality has nothing to do with humanity. It has to do with what the Creator has deemed it so. So, from the atheistic perspective, it's kind of hard for me to rationalize how would atheists come up with a moral perspective that devoids of God.
Um, I used to be a Christian. I was a young Earth creationist for 10 years. I have
Mm,
no problem thinking back to that mindset.
okay.
So you talking Christian terms all you like, I'll get it. I'll understand what you're
Hmm.
saying, and then I'll tell you why I don't believe it. So over to you. Off you go.
Sure. For example, how do we determine what is good and what is bad from a society perspective?
Well, I would say that when I was a young Earth creationist, I would say that it's
Sorry, you're cutting out. I'm not sure why. Could you repeat that?
basically the Lucifer dilemma. Are you familiar with that
Hey, I apologize, Stuart. For some reason, you went in and out for like a minute. I couldn't hear you.
dilemma?
I'm not sure. I can't hear you.
Right.
Good.
I'll speak a little more loudly. Is that better?
I think your internet is kind of
Yeah.
going up and down. So sorry about that. I really can't see.
Yeah, it might well be my internet going up and down because, as I say, I'm living in a caravan. I'm using my mobile phone, so it might well be that. Um, Are you familiar with the Euthyphro dilemma?
The what? Sorry,
Euthyphro, the
I don't
Greek
think
name.
so.
The you. All right. Well, it boils down to this: is God good because He does good things, or is a thing good because God does it?
That's a hard question to answer because what you're implying is that you are giving a limitation for what God can and cannot be.
I'm not implying anything. I'm asking you a question.
No, no, I understand. But the thing is, in order for me to answer something like that, is you're gonna have to imply that God has limitations.
No, I'm simply asking you: is
So
God
God,
good
yeah.
because He does good things, or is something good because God says it's good?
Yeah, again, if I'm asking those questions towards God, that means I am putting limitations to what I can understand about God. So I can't answer that
I'm not
question.
asking you to ask God. I'm asking your opinion.
I literally just said, right, that God is the author of what is good, right?
Right.
I
So you
I
think it's good because God says it's good.
I'm guessing that is the correct answer. Yeah.
Okay. As I understand it,
Hmm.
Greek Orthodox Christians accept Matthew's gospel.
As far as I know, all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Matthew, where
Hmm.
are we? I knew this would come up because it always comes up.
Sure.
So, Matthew 5, I'm using the King James Version. I hope you're okay with that.
Sure. Go ahead.
Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth shall pass, not one jot or tittle shall pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Yeah?
I'm not sure what the words mean. I apologize. Could you
So
explain?
jot and tittle, it's 17th century English. It's the jot is the dot above the I, and the tittle is the cross above the T.
Okay.
Basically, what he's saying is not one pen stroke shall be
Okay.
removed. Yeah? Would you
Yeah.
agree with that?
I kind of would have to know the context before I can say yes or no.
Well, the context is it's just before the Sermon on the Mount when he's talking to his disciples about keeping the law. Now, what
So
law
the
would
law
be?
of the Jewish land or the law of
Well,
what
that's my
Christ has
next
made?
question.
Sure.
What law would a Jewish rabbi, an itinerant Jewish preacher in the first century mean, given that no part of the New Testament had been written at that time?
If it is by Christ's words, then you have to understand that he's speaking about the new law that he inscribes, not the Jewish law.
Well, he's not, though, is he? Because when he talks to you, um, for I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees,
Mm-hmm.
you shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. He's talking about the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. He's talking about the Pentateuch. That's the
Sure.
only law those people would have understood. And he's saying it doesn't change. Now, you
Yes.
said,
So
hang on, you said to me at the beginning of this conversation,
mhm.
I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember word
That's
for
fine.
word, but
That's
you
fine.
said effectively, the Lord God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, an unchanging
Hmm.
God. Yeah?
Correct.
Right. If a young woman is raped outside the city, given that this is, I'm quoting the law now, and
Hmm.
she didn't scream loud enough, should she be stoned to death?
You would have to now compare Judaic law with Christian ethics, right?
No, that's why I did the bit about not one jot or tittle of the law shall be removed.
Okay, so then you would have to reference why did Christ come to earth? Why did God come to Christ?
Well, I would argue that that in itself is very silly, but
Why
basically,
is it what? Okay, so this is the thing. This is
since
the
you asked,
thing.
let me answer.
Yeah.
Let me
Okay.
answer.
Go ahead.
It goes right back to the Garden of Eden.
Okay.
Adam and Eve who did not yet know the difference between good and evil, so did not know that disobeying God was a bad thing,
Hmm.
disobeyed God and ate an apple because God, for some reason, thought that knowledge should be stored in fruit, which is a bit bizarre in itself. So,
Okay.
even though they did not know it was wrong, God not only punished them, but he punished every subsequent person ever. And then he created a loophole, which is where if God sacrifices himself to himself, he can save us from himself. It's nonsensical. So that's why Jesus came.
Yeah, so you're taking this from the scientific explanation of trying to rationalize things, right?
Of
But
course.
you have to understand things from the perspective of faith. And I understand that's why
No,
the
no, I
perspective.
don't. No, I don't.
No, I
I
get you.
absolutely do
I
not.
understand. I understand, but what I am saying is this. There's a lot of things that you kind of have to understand it from the perspective of Christianity, not from the perspective of atheism, right? The same way that from your perspective of atheism, I would have to believe that is the case, right? I cannot explain why the rock is a rock and say, oh, it's because God wills it so. That's that I wouldn't take that perspective. So there's a lot of metaphors and syllogisms and symbolisms in the Bible that cannot be explained scientifically because the whole point of the Bible and the stories of the Bible is not necessarily to understand it literally one for one. For example, the apple is not a literal apple, it's a metaphor for something else. And as far as we've been able to determine, is a code word for sexual immorality, right?
Okay.
So,
And until then, they did not know it was wrong until they did it.
yeah, the because, I don't know too much about the Old Testament in the sense of trying to understand what the metaphors meant. But for example, there's a lot of code words, right, for what things mean. Like there was the case of you and they knew her, right? The code word for they had sexual relationships. I didn't even know that until much later. But the whole point, again, of the
Really?
Bible specifically, yeah, the whole point of the code words and the understanding of how the Bible work is, it is a it is a linear understanding of spiritual awakening. Because as far as I know, in the Old Testament, the first thing that they started doing was animal sacrifices, right? In order to somehow reach God in certain ways. But then as Christ became, as God became human, the sacrifices were now deemed not necessary, right? So you have to kind of take this from the
Ah,
perspective
that's very
of
interesting.
do
Then.
we understand things literally one for one, or is there a symbolism behind it? I know from an atheistic perspective, symbolism is nonsense. But again, if you're discussing specifically what we should or should not believe, you kind of have to take each
It's not
side's
nonsense.
perspective.
It's not nonsense.
Say what?
Right. Symbolism is not nonsense. Symbolism
Okay.
is not nonsense. But when you are talking about the law,
Okay.
that's not symbolism. Look at, I mean, I know that this is, well, no, this is before the split, because the split with the Greek and Roman Church was 1054. So Pope Gregory the Great, who
Okay.
was 5th century, I think, defined exegesis as things were literal, allegorical, moral, or eschatological. End times is eschatological. But he still didn't say that there was nothing literal because there are literal things. When you're talking about the law, which is where we began this particular part of the conversation, that has to be literal.
The Old Testament is heavily focused on the actions of you follow this or it's essentially death, right? This is why Judaism and Islam still follow that. But the whole point of why Christ is because he basically told that I am bringing you a new law that you must follow in order to enter heaven. And the reason he did that is again, you're talking about a time that the only thing that people can understand about how to access, so to speak, religious knowledge, right, is through you better sacrifice and you better not work on specific days, right? And a good reference for this is that nowhere, nowhere in Christian history. I cannot say that not nowhere, but I don't think anywhere in modern Christianity do we stone anyone for adultery, right? I don't think that exists. You can
Right?
point
Because
to
you don't get your morality from God.
hold on.
If
I didn't
you
get there
did,
yet.
you would still do it.
I didn't get there yet. We're talking about the law, right? If we're talking specifically from the Christian worldview, Jesus is the law. If you're talking about the Old Testament is the law, right?
Well,
If
wait. I need you to back up a little.
sure,
Jesus is not the law.
he is the new law.
Jesus, Jesus, according to Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
is a part of the Trinity.
No, he is
He's a
the
part of,
Trinity.
well, okay, he is the
Yeah,
Godhead.
correct.
Right. That's not the law. The law is what the Godhead imbues.
Yeah, but God, Christ, and the Holy Spirit is the same thing.
Right. So
Okay.
when God says, for
Mm-hmm.
example, stone raped women to death, that's Jesus saying that.
No,
Because we've just said that God and Jesus are the same thing.
correct. But what did I also
God
say?
said that.
That the Old Testament, the only thing that humans understood was the law of the Old Testament, correct?
But hang on, wait a minute. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. So your God can
Mm-hmm.
tell people not to wear mixed fabrics and not to eat shellfish. It
Mm-hmm.
can get very confused about which animals chew the cud because it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
understand the biology of the creatures it created.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, it can't tell you not to murder victims. That makes no sense to me. That's a
Hold
particularly
on.
weak God.
I asked you again. Any Christian society today, do they stone adulterers to death?
Not as far as I'm aware, but I would be interested to look at Abyssinia.
But I am 100% sure that Islam stones people to death. And I don't know much about this, but I could place a bet that the Judaic law also believes in that.
I think you're probably right. I'm not defending either of those either. What I am
So,
saying is, hang on, what I am saying is that for Christians to accept Matthew 5
mm,
and then ignore the law of the Old Testament is essentially hypocritical.
it cannot be hypocritical for one single reason.
Go on.
When Christ came, he said, "This is the new way." That's what he said verbatim,
He
or not
also said
exactly
not
verbatim, but
he also said not one jot or tittle of the law shall be removed until all has been fulfilled
yeah,
and heaven and earth pass away. Well,
correct.
I'm
Is he
looking
talking
around
about
me
the
now,
old
earth
world?
has not passed away. Therefore,
If
all has
Christ
not
is the
been
new
fulfilled.
way, you have to
No, it's
understand this
not heaven and
contextually.
earth. What planet are you on?
Is he talking physically or is he talking spiritually? This is contextual. Yeah.
Eh,
So
Well,
my
well,
oh,
see, that's the problem. That's why Pope Gregory in the 5th century, hang on, that's because he needed a way to get beyond all of this nonsense that clearly doesn't work.
so
What
what
planet
doesn't
are
work?
you on?
I'm confused here. What are you talking about?
Well, let me go through a couple of questions and then you'll get it.
Sure.
What planet are you on? What
The
planet are
earth,
you on?
the earth.
Has the Earth passed away?
So what?
Has the Earth passed away?
No.
Has heaven passed away?
No, why would it be?
So when in Matthew 5, Jesus says, not one jot or tittle of the law shall be removed until heaven and earth pass away, what did he mean?
Okay. Do you understand this from the Christian perspective or from the atheistic perspective?
I understand it from reading the words.
Yeah, but you can read something and not understand the context.
Yeah, but I do understand the context. I think, to
Are
be
you
honest,
sure?
given
Because
that,
you seem to be
well,
taking it
given
literally,
that
and
you don't even know,
I'm
given that you
telling you,
don't even, given that you don't even know what's in the Old Testament, I think I've read the Bible several
I
times. I
didn't
used to
say I
read it
don't know
several
what's
times.
in the Old Testament. I said I don't understand much of why things were made there. However, that is not that important for this conversation because we are Christians,
Well,
right?
I think it is if you're claiming an understanding, then I think it would be appropriate for you to actually have at least read the bloody
I mean,
book.
I can go and read it, but the point of this specific conversation, Christians versus atheism, is to prove if Christianity is true or atheism is true,
Well,
right?
you cannot prove either. You can't prove Christianity is true
Well,
because it
again, you're
because
talking you're
because because it is inherently, and I would argue deliberately, unfalsifiable. And given that atheism is simply the
unfalsifiable.
statement that I do not believe,
Yeah.
then there's nothing to prove. I don't believe.
Are you
There
sure
you
about
go.
that?
Yeah,
Because your belief
I don't
system is
believe.
trying to prove that nothing exists.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Atheism is simply the statement I do not believe in any god or gods. How are you going to disprove that? I'm telling you, I don't believe.
The thing is, you can take this from the morality perspective, you can take this from the force doctrine perspective. I mean, you can take it from all kinds of perspectives. However, if you really are going to apply this as a society-wide basis for how we behave ourselves, you're going to have to see how society structure themselves. Is it better for people to believe in nothing, if that were a concept, or believe in something? If it's
I
going
don't
to
know
be a
anybody.
binary,
I
if it's
don't
going
know
to be a
anyone.
binary between something and nothing, you're going to
I
have to
don't.
come up with a solution.
I don't know anyone who believes in nothing.
Well, there's plenty of people who are degenerates and people who just follow the idea behind I'm just going to do whatever I want because that's what I want to do.
Well, that's not believing in nothing. That's believing in, I would say, unreasonably believing in their right to do what they want to do.
Yeah, but even the case where you're making whether they're unreasonable, you're now putting a moral superiority over why they're unreasonable.
No, it's not. It's not superiority, but it is a moral judgment.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
but
because
you're
I'm
making
part
a
of it.
moral judgment from a belief system that you said you don't believe in.
No, no, because my belief in living and operating in ways that benefit society was the same when I was a Christian. It was the same before I was a Christian, and it's the same after I'm a Christian. It has nothing to do with atheism. It's to do with the fact that I come from an evolved social species, and we have evolved and then created culture over that evolution to
If you were coming
allow
from
us
a
to,
Muslim background, would you be
please
different
let me
than what you
finish
are
my
today?
sentence, to
Go on.
allow us to interact in ways that benefit all of us. That's got
Okay.
nothing to do with atheism.
I agree with you. It has nothing to do with atheism.
Yeah, that's right. Because atheism is simply the belief or disbelief, in this case, the disbelief
Yeah.
in God or gods. It's got bugger all to do with anything about utility.
Well, everything that we do has a purpose, right? Unless you're arguing
Um,
from the perspective of nothing has a purpose.
well, that's a false dichotomy, but actually,
Oh,
no, I'm not
I'm getting
arguing that
somewhere
at
with
all.
this argument, right? Because I'm arguing specifically from a binary perspective, not in a whole spectrum of ideas, right?
Well, then I
It's either
disagree with your
or it
initial premise.
isn't kind of
No,
situation.
I disagree with that premise.
So how are you gonna? This is the thing. How are you gonna reach the truth if there is such a thing as a truth if you cannot differentiate between yes or a no?
Well, I can differentiate between yes or no, but that's a false binary.
Uh, Give me a second. I'm so sorry. I actually thought we were gonna meet about an hour and a half ago, and I didn't realize that you put it for 3:30 Central Time. So my apologies. We might actually have
Well,
to
I just
continue
put
this
it for 6:30
conversation
my time.
6:30. GMT.
Yeah, I'm in England. Did tell you that.
I don't know. I don't know why it came up 3 hours later on my time. It was very odd. Um, and that's the earliest you can do it, right?
Well, yeah, I work 9 to 5. By the time I get home and then get set up and feed me
Yeah,
cats and all of that, it's 6:30.
I got you. I'm trying to figure out what is a good day because definitely will have to continue this conversation. I have like 5 more minutes, but um
Okay, well, we can work that out at another
Sorry.
time.
Yeah. Anyway, what I was basically arguing is that in order for me to find the truth, I need to argue from a perspective of binary. It's a yes or an alchemy for me.
Right. Um, See, I think that you you are confusing different concepts here. You can get a yes or no about whether or not something is true,
Uh-huh.
but when you're being so broad and nebulous as to say, well, you either believe in something or you believe in nothing, that's a false dichotomy. I believe in all sorts of things. God just doesn't happen to be one of them. That's a false
So,
binary.
is there anything that you can point that we can structure society that involves nothing that came from the Christian world?
Um, well, given that I live in a culture that's been steeped in Christianity for what 1600 years here in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
nothing that immediately springs to mind. However, that does not mean that it's impossible to structure a society. But forgive me, my society has been so steeped in Christianity since before I was born. Of course,
Yeah,
I can't bring anything to mind because I'm a product of my society.
correct. So, if I were to take that from a broader scale, right, it makes me wonder if we don't understand the concept of good versus evil without a theistic perspective, because you cannot make a case for good versus evil without a moral dilemma, then you would have to argue what society that is devoid of any belief in God, nothing, actually functions very well. People will point to Japan, but even they have a religion.
There is one,
Okay, I'm
and
listening.
it's the only one that I'm aware of. It's an island. It's South something island in the Pacific,
Are you
and
talking about Papua New Guinea?
they,
No, sorry, my
no, it's
apologies.
not
I was
Papua
thinking
New
Papua
Guinea.
New Guinea.
No, it isn't Papua New Guinea. But it's South something island. I honestly can't remember the name off the top of my head. They have no concept of a deity, but they
Yeah.
have a functioning society.
Uh, but you kind of have to scale this up, right? Are they really that impressive as a society? Are they functioning properly? Do they have no moral dilemmas that we would consider problematic? For example, the reason I say this is when the sorry about that. When the British were occupying India, they had to ban the practice of wife burning, and that was purely a Christian moral dilemma, which is suti. I don't know if you know about it.
Yeah, yeah, I know about
Okay.
Suti. Yeah,
So, in many ways, the arguing for a better society, better implies moral good, right? Is the implication
right.
that one
Just
morality is
just to
superior
be
to
clear,
another? Yeah,
just to be clear, Suti was still practiced up until about the 1980s.
I'm aware,
It was
but
the Indian. Yeah, right. So please don't misrepresent, because it was the Indian government, which was not a Christian government; it was a
no,
Hindu
that's not what I
government.
said. That's not what I said. But what I am saying is that first we have the concept of moral between good and evil, right? But then there's the concept of moral superiority, meaning one moral does more good than the other. For example, cutting out hearts of the Native American Indians from the Christian perspective is horrible and despicable. So, from the moral
I
good
agree.
perspective, we had to ban that crap immediately, right?
Well,
Uh,
if you're going down that route,
yeah.
I'm cool with that. You see, my I have there are people say, well, if you don't believe in God, where does your morals come from? Well, I'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
My internal management of myself, I'm a practicing Stoic.
Good.
For
I actually
my
like it. It's pretty good.
for my dealings with society, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
utilitarian, but not the original utilitarian that's primarily rules based. The John Stuart Mill version of utilitarian, which is principle based.
I'm a
I'm
little bit aware
also
of his principle.
okay. I'm also a humanitarian or a humanist, I should say. That's
Okay.
where my morality comes from in terms of modern parlance. But actually, it comes from
Hmm.
the fact that I'm a member of an evolved social species that needs to get along with each other, and there's a cultural overlay on that. Now, my cultural overlay, the one that I choose, is by no means Christian, because
Yeah.
the 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 idea of Stoicism is pagan, although I don't have a religion, I don't believe any gods.
Yeah.
And John Stuart Mill was an atheist.
Got you. Now,
Humanitarianism is atheist.
just one thing, and I apologize. I need to go, but I promise we will continue this conversation. This is like a 3 or 4 hour conversation if we're honest with each other. Uh,
Yeah, probably. But can I just ask you to think through one thing before
I'm
you
listening,
go?
and I'll tell you mine after yours. But go ahead.
All right. You are familiar with the term agnostic, meaning not knowing. Yeah?
Unsure.
All right. Gnostic is no,
Mm-hmm.
agnostic is don't know.
Okay.
Yeah? That's where the word comes from. Theist is believing in a deity, a
Mm-hmm.
theo. In exactly the same way as you add the the negation to Gnostic, you add the the negation to theism, not
Mm-hmm.
believing in a God. That's all it means. All this other stuff that you're putting onto it is not intrinsically part of atheism.
Well, the thing is, you are believing in a deity by not believing in nothing. You're believing in yourself. You are the
No, I'm
deity.
not a deity.
So
I'm
you,
not a deity. I'm not a god.
the curious nature about human historical advancement is atheism and Nietzsche and though essentially the world wars were all facilitated by the Christian worldview. It sounds kind of odd for me to say that,
No, no, it's
but
absolutely true. I agree with you.
so there is a case to be made as to why Christianity allowed for things like that, either good or bad, to flourish, right? And this literally all this conversation about believing in a deity or not really comes down to this. If we are to structure society, from which perspective makes more sense for human flourishing? I know people will use human
No, no,
flourishing.
no, 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 no. That's your big mistake. There is a difference between truth and
Uh-huh.
utility.
No, I get it. I understand
Right.
what you're saying.
So the argument about being an atheist or not is based upon whether I believe it's true. It has nothing to do with utility.
Well, if we apply forced doctrine to a society, do you think atheists will survive if the religious people decide to kill all atheists?
Um, well, historically, that's not been the case. That when religious
I
people
mean, I
decide to
get it.
kill
I'm
atheists,
doing a
they do
pure
so.
hypothetical here. Let's
No,
just
I'm not being
say,
hypothetical. I'm talking historical fact.
okay.
Theists kill atheists. Atheists tend not to kill theists.
I would disagree with you. A lot of people who don't believe in God are constantly murdering people who do believe in God.
Yeah, but they're not murdering them because of that faith.
No, I get it. But the thing is, if they are based on, I don't have a moral system that is based on God, I can do whatever I want. A lot
Well,
of
if
those
I do
people,
have a moral
yeah.
system that is based on God, I can kill anyone who disagrees.
The Christian worldview is not about murdering people. That's the big
Well,
distinction.
historically, it has been.
No, not at all. The people will point to the
You heard
Crusades,
about
but
the Crusades?
yeah, the Crusades were started because Islam invaded Christian nations. I'm sure
Actually,
you know
no,
about that.
they weren't. They weren't. The Crusades began because Pope Leo in 1095 wanted to be able to reunite the Eastern Christians via the
Correct.
King of Constantinople because he had
Correct.
a rival in Paris and he wanted to be the guy. He's a bit like Donald Trump at the moment. He wants to be the bloke that's seen as the great conquering hero. That's what did it. All this
No.
Deus revolt.
Islam had invaded since the 1600s, sorry, 1600s, 600s with the creation of Islam, death by sword or conversion, until literally 400 years later when Pope Leo
Then why?
decided to unite
Then
the
why?
Christian world.
Then why did Muhammad talk about the people of the book?
What you mean? Are you
Well,
there? Oh,
Muhammad was very, very happy. Yeah, I'm here. My people who believed in the Abrahamic God, he described them as people of the book. The problem was they kept trying to kill Muslims. That's where you get, like, for example, the Battle of the Camel, for example, which is all about defense. That's why you get the flight to Medina, which again is all about Muslims being attacked by Jews and by Christians. They were fighting back. Now, okay, by the time you get to Spain, it's different. But no, sorry, the issue about the Crusades was it was absolutely not a defensive war; it was a political
It
war.
was. All of North Africa was Christian, all of it. They decided you either convert or we kill you. That was the whole purpose of Islam's expansion. The whole purpose. There was
Right,
no
but
way.
there
Look,
was nothing that the Crusades weren't going for North Africa; they were going for the Levant.
no, no, I get it. They had to start from the Eastern Bloc, if you call it that way, from the Alps of Spain down. I get that, but the point of the ideology
No, you
behind.
don't get it because Spain was
Mhm.
not. I mean, it was only southern Spain anyway. It certainly wasn't the Alps of Spain.
No,
The
it was all the
problem,
way to the north. The Reconquista started in the north, all the way to the north.
no, no, it was what
Are
was
you
it?
sure?
Philip and Isabella in the 15th century.
Yeah, I
This had
know.
nothing to do with the 11th century Crusades.
So the Moors, right, had it already invaded back in the day. Of course, it had nothing to do directly with the age because that was 500 years apart. But the point of the Crusades was Islam had completely invaded Christian lands. Like
So, if
almost,
that's the case,
yeah.
why did European crusaders completely bypass Spain
Mhm.
and head for the Levant?
I'm almost 100% sure it had to do with the kings because the kings were controlling the church in essentially each country.
No, 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 no. Now you get into the medieval political issue of simony, and actually, that's just not the case. It was way less um, consistent than that.
Yeah. I know that there was a lot of risk with the Catholic Church and within the Catholic Church, and then there was a clear division between Orthodoxy and Catholic Church. There's obviously
Right,
problems
but
there.
that wasn't until 1054.
I think it was before. I mean, the
No,
reason that the
it was the
Catholic
Great
Church.
Schism was
No,
1054.
I
It was
I
because
know.
the Pope sent Candida, wasn't it? Somebody
No,
Candida.
I'm aware, but what I'm saying is that there's already schisms in the sense of people who had their own belief system. In fact, you'll always hear Roman Catholics say, "Oh, Peter had the keys, right? So he inherited the church, kind of thing." But I got no more time. I do apologize. But my
Okay.
whole point about I want you to think of just one thing because you gave me the issue about what is a
Okay.
theist versus an atheist. My whole point of this conversation is if we are to believe in something, but two people believe the opposite things, who do we side with? That's it.
Okay, you don't have to side with anyone.
Well, you will at
You go
some
with what
points because one
you,
is going to apply
well, that's
force
your false
doctrine.
binary.
I'm
Sometimes
just
I
saying.
don't know is the right answer.
I got you. I understand, but you have to think about it again from how is society going to survive, right? If I believe in something that completely contradicts yours and I believe I am right, however, I can apply force doctrine to you so your belief system goes in the trash, right? Naturally, history will say that I was right because I will write the books essentially. So if we apply
Which
this
is
from a
what's happened
society,
largely.
so if we apply this from a society-wide perspective, we have to really judge, and judging implies morality. We have to judge who is going to structure society better.
Okay, I
So
can
I'm
answer
going
that
back
really
to
quickly. I can answer that really quickly.
all
So
right.
I'm not just a counter apologist. I'm also an anti-Nazi, anti-fascist um,
Okay.
activist. People will say you cannot have a multicultural society,
You
and I
can't.
say I agree. I don't want a multicultural society. I want a single tolerant society.
And there's only one way to do that, really. You have to have the
Yeah,
same belief system.
which no, 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 no. A tolerant society is a society that allows people their belief system and does not, for example, favor one above another when that one wants to remove the rights from gay people, for example.
Then you have to
Or
ask
one,
yourself just one question.
uh huh.
Which Religion specifically allows for the most tolerance. That's it.
Um, well, I would say probably Sikhism, from my understanding.
I'm not sure. I mean, the Sikhs and the Hindus are constantly fighting each other now, as far as I
I
know.
didn't say I didn't say that they were completely tolerant. I said
No,
the
I
most
I know, I
tolerant.
understand.
Maybe
However,
the Jains,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, but the thing is, every single time when there is division, it naturally includes the talks of moral superiority, right? Sorry, my speech is weird.
Right. So basically, what you're saying is that we cannot have a tolerant society because religions won't allow it.
No, what I did say is that if you're going to have a tolerant society, you're going to have to judge this from the perspective of the best moral good. That's what I said.
Okay, none of which has anything to do with whether or not your religion is true.
Well, we could argue that, but if we're talking about society and how it functions, you're going to have to go down that rabbit hole. If we're going to talk
Okay, well,
about
let's
what
do
is,
that next time.
yeah,
But I
we
think there
can
is a
talk about
real difference.
all kinds of things. You can educate me on history because my Spanish history is off the rails. Even though I graduated high school with a specific interest in Spanish history. Funny enough,
Okay, I know
um,
bugger all about Spain, but I know that much.
I got you. But this conversation is going to take an unexpected turn that you won't believe. I'm not sure if I'm the first person who has challenged you the way I have, but you'll see what I mean eventually.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're one of many that's come up with this same nonsense, frankly. But we'll
I'm not
talk about it
sure.
later.
I'm not sure
Oh yeah,
because
yeah. It's always the same. It's an attempt to obfuscate between truth and utility. It's the idea that I should look with faith, and we'll maybe talk about Hebrews
I didn't
11.
say that actually. That's the difference. I
Well,
said
and I
that
had to
if
look at
you're,
it through the lens of faith in order to get to the truth. Well, let's talk about Hebrews 11 and what that actually means next time.
I'll look at the scripture. I don't know it by hand, but I'm pretty sure you got a case there,
Hebrews
and that's
11,
fine.
verse 1.
Yeah. Uh, let the timing is a big deal because my kids come back and they make a lot of noise, but we'll try to figure something out. Okay.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
I thank you for your
I'll
time.
send you the link as soon as I've got it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Okay.
All right. Cheers. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye bye now.